Hey, Julian.
Right. So we had a little pre-chat before this to like set an intention, and I was saying that the purpose of this is to to address just to find out how microsolidarity looks in the wild for people who are building communities. So bring back into that network of direct experience, your direct experience in it, and kind of geeking out a little bit on what microsolidarity means, what belonging means, what creating that entails, what kind of learning edges and things you experience in that. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds great. I'm looking forward
Yes.
to it.
Cool. So if you tell me just a little bit about your project.
Sure. So our project is called Community Village, and we describe it as a community-first approach to meditation, oriented at people in their 20s and 30s. Um, and so what we do is we build community around meditation. And yeah, basically we exist in many different forms, but the reason we exist is that meditation is quite difficult to kind of keep up with and integrate into life
Mm.
and understand, I think, in a deeper way when we're doing it alone, as it can be easy to get kind of caught in this individualized practice. But when we bring it together as a community, there's so much more beauty that arises from it, in friendship and in accountability and inspiration and support. So, yeah, that's what we do.
Mm. So it's a community first approach to meditation, as you say.
Mm,
And
yeah.
what does that mean? What does it make? What makes it community
Mm.
first?
Well, so the initial founding of Community Village was came out of this spark where I had been practicing meditation for maybe 8 years, and was mostly like on an app on my own in my room, and I didn't really have people to talk about it with, and it was a little bit. Well, it wasn't as in the mainstream, I guess, as it is now. So it was a little bit taboo. Um, Still is, I think, in a way, because people don't know always how to talk about it, like don't have the language or the spaces to talk about it.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it was born out of this loneliness in my practice. And when I went out to look at, okay, what's happening out there, I went to meditation centers, I went for silent meditation retreats. I said, oh, surely, I'll find my people here. And then, I'd show up and I'd meditate and I'd be silent. And there's a nice feeling of, belonging in that, okay, there's others here who also are doing this and seem to think it's worthwhile. But then I never met anyone. We didn't get to say, even just as simple as, hey, I'm Caleb, here's where I live. Here's the things I like to do. Here's why I meditate, and to me, that part felt really important, especially during this time. COVID had just hit, and it was like we needed belonging, we needed community more than anything else across the world. And my meditation practice was so supportive to me during these difficult times, and yet, in a way, it was still isolating. Um,
Mm.
so, yeah, I mean, how it started was with 30-day journeys, which is the core community program where it's a cohort-based journey where 5 to 10 people come together for 5 weeks. We meet every week for 90 minutes. And in between those weeks, we have content learning about meditation from psychology and neuroscience side, from Buddhist philosophy, from how to form a habit. And we have reflection questions that we do on our own. And then we have meditations that we do. And when we come together, we have this opportunity to not only meditate together and talk about the experience, but get to know each other as people, and really develop trust and develop comfortability and develop relationships with each other in a way that I think yeah, there's often not as many opportunities to do this in a vulnerable, meaningful way in the modern life.
Mm. And is this, so it's like a cohort-based course where there is content that people learn, and then
Mm,
there's sessions where they interact. Yeah?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then
So that's how it.
there's like a being together. What does being together look like?
Mm, yeah, good question. Um, so for a while, the 30-day journey was like all of what we did. We've done 20 cohorts of it, and it was really beautiful what was happening there. People, everyone from people who had never tried meditating before to people who've been meditating for 5 or 10 years got different but similar value from it because it was not just meditation, but it was also community. And so we found that was really working, but then we didn't know what to do after that. And we said, okay, how do we make a bridge into a larger belonging outside of just that cohort? Right. In Microsolidarity terms, like going from the crew to the congregation or congregation to crew, how do these two things relate to each other? Um, and so what that evolved to be was, we're a peer-led, co-created community. And so we started empowering people and supporting people to set up their own gatherings, whether that be visiting a meditation center together, having a mindful dinner party together, going for a hike together, all sorts of like social activities, where we basically thought of it as like the social infrastructure for meditators, for like-minded and like-hearted people to get together and to bring these values and these practices to life through, yes, meditation, but also just life.
Mm. Okay. And these 30-day journeys, are they online or are they in real life?
So it started online because it started during COVID. And we kind of had this grand vision at the beginning. It was like, it's going to be online, it's going to be in person. We launched it in like 4 cities in Berlin, Lisbon, Portland, San Francisco. We were traveling around trying to like start this spark and plant a seed, and then yeah, help it, support it to spread in kind of like a natural, uh, yeah, in a microsolidarity sort of way, you can say. Um, and as we went deeper into that, it was really interesting because it was like, I think there was starting to be a moving away from online.
Mm.
Um, and we realized that everyone was just craving in person so much. Um, and so it was like at a certain point, this was maybe a little less than a year ago, maybe a year ago, we started shifting to all in person. Um, and that was a really big shift because um, at that time too, I think there was a lot of online meditation offerings because all of the in-person places moved online for COVID. Um, but once we got in person, in many ways, we were one of few who were starting to do in person. Um, so, and that became a really meaningful part of what we do because yeah, just creating opportunities for that real life connection to reemerge was so special at that time. Still is, I think.
Yes. And I saw that. Do you mean these weekend gatherings and programs that you were putting together? I saw in Berlin.
Mm,
Fortunately, I never managed to take part in one, but they've always looked like really great programming in
mm,
small groups, like 10 to 15 people, something like that.
hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, so we've done like the last series we did in Berlin was a half-day meditation retreat followed by a potluck meal where we
Mm.
gathered in our flat and invited a bunch of people, and we sat together for, for 4 hours, 5 hours, alternating sitting, walking meditation, having some Dharma talks and inspirational wisdom, and then we got together and we broke bread and we chatted about the experience and we um, yeah, fostered friendship.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so these groups and cohorts, they feed into this community that stays together. afterwards.
Mm,
Yeah, is that
yeah.
is
Yeah.
and how do
So
you host that?
what's that?
How do you host that?
Mm, yeah, good question. Um, so this is a big aha moment for us where we were really trying to figure out like what do we do to create greater depth of relationships and a sense of belonging. Um, and I think it was really helpful actually going to the Microsolidarity summer camp in Berlin and seeing how everyone was getting involved, whether it's a small position or a large position. There were circles of facilitators. There was the kitchen, and everyone who was helping out there, um, and I was really inspired by that. And so we ended up coming up with this idea of like the circles of involvement, right? To help explain how the community is structured. So the biggest circle is community village. It's open to everyone. The general public can come to the most broad gathering and experience community village. Then we've got that second circle, which is called the member circle. And basically, if you've come to one Sangha time, which is our weekly gathering, or two other gatherings, you get an invitation to the member circle. And basically, what the member circle is, it exists as a WhatsApp group, and it's a two-way communication where everyone can contribute by making offers, requests, or ideas for things that they want to do together. So people, once they have a sense of, okay, I understand kind of what community village is, what we're trying to do here, what the mission is, then they're connected with all these other meditators who then, they can say, hey, there's this great retreat going on an hour away, but I don't have a car. Does anyone want to carpool? Or it's a beautiful sunny day out. I'd love to go and have a picnic in the park. Does anyone want to come? And so that's really like the I guess congregation level, like just flow of communication and information that's happening online. And then every week at our weekly gathering, also inspired by Microsolidarity, from visiting the Spain house this past December that Rich and Nati were running, we have this offers, requests, and ideas board. So we have active time to cultivate ideas and to allow each person to kind of bring to life what they want to see in the world and what they want to contribute to the community.
Like, for example, what kinds of things do you have surfaced through that?
So this month, the theme is rest and renunciation. So so far in May, we've had just a relaxing picnic, get off work early, enjoy the sun, and just hang out. I did a Japanese tea garden, walk around the garden, have a tea and chat. There's been requests that people put out for just like meditating. There's a type of meditating on a raisin. Might sound kind of funny, but the idea is that you might take like an hour with just a raisin and really recognize the beauty and the wholeness and the interconnectedness just by like an everyday object that you wouldn't think otherwise of. So yeah, but it can be anything. The idea here is that when we get together with people who have an intention to live life in a certain way and have a commitment to exploring a certain path, then it's really helpful to have people to just mirror you and be like supporting you, because at the end of the day, like it's really countercultural to like slow down and sit still, right? Like it's not reinforced in our society. And when we go to work and when we go to the grocery store and when we go and live our lives after cultivating these qualities of loving kindness and generosity and goodwill, and then there's like someone honking the horn at you in the road and someone yelling at you in the street and garbage all over the floor, it's easy to fall back into, oh yeah, this is yeah. So yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that much what we're doing together. It's more about building spiritual friendships to support each other.
Yeah, it just gives a good glimpse of what kind of needs people have, right? And what kind of interactions are needed, wanted in their community.
Mm.
And yeah, I want to ask you a little bit more about microsolidarity and kind of how you're integrating that. But
Mm.
just to get also a sense of the what kind of a size community are we talking about right now?
Um, so San Francisco right now is our main community, and
Mhm.
we have around 400 people in the wider congregation, and then maybe 80 or 90 in like the smaller member circle. Um, so that's the size there. And then Berlin is maybe 150, 200 in the larger community. And we actually haven't set up the member circle there yet. But we kind of wanted to learn, at the beginning, as I mentioned, we tried to do it in like 4 cities. We ended up taking it back to 2. Um, and we're really trying to dial it in San Francisco before we spread ourselves too thin and start bringing it other places. So,
Okay, well, that's quite big, 400 people. Um, yeah. And so Microsolidarity, tell us a little bit,
mm,
how did you find out about it? And so your community kind of came first.
mm,
Microsolidarity was something that you found when you already had, built or
mm.
run many cohorts and were quite into the project, right?
Yeah, so we were doing this, and we connected with Ants, who was involved in Inspiral for quite some time, and good friends with Rich and Natty, and he was kind of telling us, we were just chatting about meditation and community building, and he started sending some links, and I was kind of like, okay, yeah, interesting, maybe this could be helpful. And I can't remember when it is, but at one point I went deeper in. I just spent like an hour or two reading the different microsolidarity parts of the website. And it's just like everything. I was like, yes, yes, yeah. Like either yes, we're doing this and we totally agree this is the way we're thinking about it, or yes, we don't know how to do this and you have answers. This network has answers that are so helpful. And then maybe a third yes, like, oh yes, there's other people doing this and we can meet and we can talk about this and we can support each other.
Do you remember what were the kind of biggest yeses of them? In terms,
mm,
yeah, just kind of maybe snippets of ideas or descriptions that resonated.
yeah, I think um, supporting people to uh, step into roles of co-creation
Mm.
and distributing responsibility in terms of like ownership, facilitation, hosting. That was really powerful because while the 30-day journeys were peer led, they were peer led by me or Nina.
Mm.
Nina is my partner. We started this together, and so like we're peer led in the sense that we weren't meditation teachers, which is uncommon in the meditation world. Normally, if you're learning about meditation and practicing it, you're with a teacher. um, but it wasn't peer led in the sense that like it was us hosting every time. And when I experienced Microsolidarity, I said, oh, I think there's a deeper sense of I think there's a deeper thing here. And what that was, I've learned over time now is that, and I'll speak from my own experience, I've been involved in a lot of different communities where I'm waiting for that feeling of belonging. And I'm like, oh, I think this is the community I like. Like I align with the mission. I'm doing the practices. People seem cool, but I don't really feel like I belong. And I often project that externally. And I say, there's something wrong with the community. There's something that if only this was better, then I would belong. If only this was better, then I would contribute more. Um, and what I realized through Microsolidarity is that that is the exact point where I think belonging begins to deepen, is when I can step into the role of saying, yes, I'm going to help out. I'm going to be a part of this. I'm not going to wait for it to happen over there or wait for someone on top to do it. I'm going to do it. And stepping into that sense in the Microsolidarity network, in little ways, made me feel really connected to the network and like a part of something that was bigger than me.
Mm.
Um, so now it's been a journey of trying to bring that to Community Village, and to try and support people to have that similar experiences.
So it's your own step of into a co-creation role that
Mm,
generates belonging.
mm. I
Is
think so.
yeah.
I think so. I think there's a lot of experiences of momentary belonging that are created, especially now because there's such a need for it. Like one-off gatherings that give you peak experiences that are amazing and you feel super connected and it's like, this is great. And then you go home and you're like, you still don't have a friend to text when you're like, you need to move or like you're having a struggle and you need to share it with someone. Um, and to me, yeah, it's about like consistency. It's like all these dirty words, I think, that get a bad rep, like accountability, responsibility, commitment. It's
Mm.
like how do we take those words and explore them in a deeper way and not be afraid of them, but embrace the elements that can actually benefit our lives and the lives of people around us.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's quite profound, and it really resonates with my kind of how microsolidarity impacted me too, as in we often think of belonging as something as bestowed upon us, or like you describe, it's a perfect match between, our expectations for this experience and this
Mm,
experience, that atmosphere that is generated. But a very simple hack, for the lack of a better word, is that ownership over something, just stepping into that role of responsibility,
mm,
creates that sense of belonging by itself,
mm, mm.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you experience that in the gathering as well in the summer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It felt yeah. Yeah, the what was it? Open space technology. I experienced
Mm.
that for my first time at summer camp, and I was like, "Yeah, this is awesome." And pods like I don't know if they called them pods, but when there was
I
like three
think
people
pods,
who would
the
check
three
in once
people.
per day.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's great. Those things I think were really powerful for me, um, to see, yeah, how to build the structure to support this type of thing because it's not easy, right? To especially coming into a new community to have the um, to have the courage, to have the clarity, to feel supported, to feel like it's okay to fail. It's okay to you know to set up a gathering and no one comes. I did one offering in open space technology, and at the summer camp, and one person came, right? And I had many experiences like that before where no one came, so I was okay with it. But for the first time when that happened, it's not so easy. It
Mm.
wasn't so easy for me at least, and Nina and others in the community. But the question is, how do we get beyond that, right? How do we not be afraid of having that first step or take the first step and then say I failed? But how do we have the community support to take the next step, take the next step, and the next step? And I
Mm.
think that's life, right? It's like it's so easy to get stuck, with fears and different blockers. But how can we support each other to overcome those and to embrace that as a learning moment, as a growth moment?
And what was it that do you remember what was it that made it okay for you? The fact that just one person turned up.
Mm,
Why was that not a terrible thing suddenly?
yeah, I think there's two things. One is like a major element of Buddhist meditation practice, the concept of non-self, right? It's not about me. It's like I'm putting something out there. I'm offering something because I'm inspired to offer it. If other people don't come to it, it's not about me. Like I don't have to like make a story about, oh, I'm not good enough, or you know, they don't like me, or all these stories that are so easy to create. Um, yeah, through my practice, I've just been able to have a separation from that and recognize that it's not needed. And then the second part is, I mean, the difference between no people and one person comes, that's unbelievable. You know, like I'm so conditioned, you know, I worked in startups for a long time, and really was conditioned for growth, and we need more, bigger growth, bigger impact, which is great. It's really, really good to have a big impact. And I think it's understated the impact of one-to-one relationship, and the impact that even an organization that might be around for however long and fail or close shop or whatever it might be, seeds that are planted in people's lives, the opportunities that are given to people is, you can't know what's going to come from that. So the one person that showed up, we were able to then form a bond that created the basis for a relationship, and now I feel really connected to that person, and it's a special relationship. So,
Mm.
um, you know, but if I came at it with the perspective, oh, it's just one person, oh, I'm just going to throw in the towel and, you know, forget it, we'll cancel it, we'll delay it, we'll do it another time. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is also, but it was the format, the open space technology that enabled that kind of thing, right? Which is not a
mm-hmm,
usual format for a gathering. And the
mm,
open space technology, one of the principles is whoever turns up are the right people to turn up. So in some ways, that's a liberating structure, isn't it, too,
mm,
um, to model these expectations.
mm,
That one is
yeah,
good and zero is good too, actually.
mm, yeah,
If
yeah,
nobody
totally.
if nobody turned up, how would you feel about that? Would you still be upset, do you think?
No, no, that's great. I love it. I love when no one shows up. The last time I thought about no one showing up, I was hosting a mindful hike. Um, and I always wish that I'm more mindful when I'm in nature, like when I'm walking alone in general in the city. I've had experiences where I'm very mindful and connected, and it's unbelievable. It's so healing. It's like everything that is good in life, I think, is like mindfulness in nature for me. But often I'm rushing through, and oh, maybe I'll turn it into exercise and I'll walk a bit faster. Oh, maybe I'll call a friend. Oh, I just remembered I need to add someone to the grocery list, you know? So, like, to not take my phone, to set an intention to have a mindful hike. If no one shows up, I can still honor that intention, right? If no one shows up to a meditation gathering, I can still honor that intention. I can still meditate on my own. I've carved out this space. I've created this environment. Um, let's honor that, you know?
Hmm. Okay, so with Microsolidarity gathering, it was yeah, these experiences of helping people to step into roles where they feel kind of a sense of responsibility
Mm,
for what they bring, yeah, and how
mm,
they contribute.
mm,
What that
yeah.
was one of the insights you said.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. The opportunity to do it, and then the support for afterwards when inevitably there's some story in your head, oh, it could have been better. What everyone has their own stories, but
Mm.
then that support afterwards to work it out and talk about it and not just keep it
And how did you experience that support?
in. Through the pods,
Through the pod.
the yeah.
Yeah, a
Hmm.
chance to debrief and kind of talk about exactly how certain things registered and have a perspective on that.
Hmm.
Okay.
Totally. Yeah.
And so, and how did that affect you in terms of the community that you have? How
Mm.
did you what did you try to bring in, or did you try to change anything on off the back of that experience?
Yeah, I think one thing was the this offers requests and ideas board. We have a community board and a volunteer board. And every week at our weekly gathering in San Francisco, we celebrate all the beautiful things happening in the community, and do like the snaps or something to make some noise and really honor people's contributions. And then we have that open space to do basically a form of open space technology for our lives. And so that's been really beautiful. And then another one for me, just personally, is like, I have, there's an experience I had at summer camp where someone told me, like, they taught me how to make coffee. And then they're like, all right, write the playbook on how to make coffee. The next person to make coffee. And it just felt really good to be like, okay, this is like, I can do this. Like, I can be helpful in this role. It's like, I know how to make the coffee. I can help someone else make the coffee. And then I felt like a part of the experience where, like, if something was going wrong with the coffee and someone was struggling with it, I could go over and be like, hey, do you need help with the coffee? And it just made me feel like a part of it. And so we're trying to integrate this more and more at Community Village in just little ways, right? Like, inviting people in to help set up the room and clean up the room, inviting people to help co-facilitate the gatherings, and step into a role of leadership and of ownership in the community. We just finished last night a month hosting Sangha time at a community member's house. So it was always at Nina and my apartment up until then. And we've been having some housing instability, and we thought, okay, how do we continue this? And so we put the ask out to the community. A year ago, we didn't even start a weekly gathering because we didn't have the housing stability, and we were afraid it's not going to be able to continue. We don't want to start something and then not be able to see it through. And now it's like we had 3 people step up and say, I'll host it in my home. I'll invite strangers into my home every week. I'll clean the place. I'll set it up. And that's a big thing, I think, that's a really big thing. And so, yeah, more and more people, as they're seeing others step into this role, I think that there's a sense of inspiration and hopefully a sense of agency to say, I can do this too. And not just in Community Village, but in my life, in all different ways.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so stepping in that community as stepping up within community as a general experience of stepping up in other things. Yeah. And for you as a founder, it's a kind of, decentralizing things. How does that feel for you as, making people participate more and take on more responsibility and asking them to do things? How is that impacting you, the way you see yourself in running Community Village?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in the past, I definitely have a conditioning where I'm afraid to ask for help. I think that I have to do everything on my own. And so this has been a real learning process for me, and an opportunity to overcome that and to face it, and to ask people for help when I need it, and to trust that it will come. I think that I think there can be a lot of pressure that I put on myself to do this right, to serve the community, and um, to always be listening, to always be, hearing feedback, to always be integrating, to always be welcoming more people in, to always be improving our structures and our ways of doing things to be more accessible and approachable and connecting. And I think when I noticed that it doesn't have to all come from me, it's not going to all come from me, and it's not going to be best when it all comes from me. It's going to be best when it comes from all of us. Is a really great learning experience for me, and something that I think is like, yeah, helping me learn a lot about myself, and also learn about what it means to belong and be a part of a community that's not just making offers, as tends to be the first thing that people do when they have something to offer, but having the vulnerability to make requests and to really tune into what is it that I need and can I ask for it. And that's something that I hope to practice more and be able to model for the community, to invite other people into it, because for me it's like it's so hard and when I do it, it's so rewarding.
Mm. And do you notice how it's impacting the community? So we talked about you, but how does it impact others? And do
Mm,
you notice kind of a temperature change a little bit in the community in some way
mm,
through
yeah,
practices?
I think there's kind of two ways um, to think about this. One is like, what's the impact that meditation is having on people's lives? And
Yeah.
two is, what's the impact that community has on people's lives? And so, one beautiful thing is that we're able to introduce a lot of people to meditation for their first time. Um, Either it's their first meditation, or a lot of people have meditated a handful of times or on and off, on an app, on their own, but hasn't really, yeah, haven't talked about it with anyone. And so lots of people are really just seeing the fundamental um, way that mindfulness can change their lives.
Mm,
And that is like amazing. I mean, in experiences where people feel trapped or feel afraid or feel lonely, um, to have a new way of seeing, to have a new perspective. Um, I mean, it influences people's direction in life and their way of making decisions.
mm,
Um, so that's pretty special. And then there's the community side, which is like it's a way out of loneliness for a lot of people. Um, it helps people feel connected again. Um, to be in a space where they feel comfortable to be vulnerable, to speak openly, to be listened to be heard. Um, People are saying that they found their best friends through community village, and that
mm,
just is like feels amazing. Um, so, and then maybe a third one is like there's people who have been meditating for many years, who do have a consistent practice, a deeper practice, and who still, this is their first experience really feeling like they have community around the practice. And what that allows is really a deepening, right? People are sitting meditation retreats for their first time. People are sitting more retreats, longer retreats. People are doing more study. They're practicing longer. They're visiting new centers and opening up their minds to new types of meditation. Um, and at the end of the day, hopefully they're building friendships that will last their entire lives and that will be like deeply nourishing for them. That's my hope. Like, beyond any community village lasting or not lasting, it's like, can we build friendships that last? That's what matters.
mm. Yeah. And what is the edges that you feel?
Mm,
Where can you deepen this experience kind of even more, where you can
mm,
help them to do that better?
mm.
Do you think about that?
Yeah, totally. Right now, the big one is like money and power and um, the different oppressive structures in our society. Like, how do we talk about these things in an open and honest way and make this a community that's not shying away from these things, but
Mm,
that's creating the spaces where we can talk about them and embrace the discomfort. Um, and that's really hard, right? Because the initial feeling is like, you want to push it away. It's like, it's really nice when we meditate together and it's like calm and like we're friends and we're going on a hike and like, that's beautiful, right? Um, but then what's after that, there was a circle I think that Jocelyn ran at the summer camp that was like belonging and then what?
mm,
Um, and in a way, I think it's the same with meditation. It's like mindfulness and then what? And the teachings, the Buddhist teachings often, they say that the Buddha taught first, um, first like ethics, and then generosity, and then meditation. So
Mm.
meditation was the last thing that was taught. And I think in our way, meditation is the first thing because everyone feels it's quite exciting and useful. But now, can we bring back the ethics and the generosity, and can we learn to have hard conversations, and yeah, bring the world together again?
Mm. And yeah, so if I may ask you a little bit about how this community is run in this very practical sense, is that a
Hmm.
donation-based community? Is this the main thing that you do?
Hmm.
Yeah, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, so Nina and I have been working on this full time for 2 years.
Mhm.
Haven't taken a salary from it, just invested our own money in it. And we've been 100% donation based for that time. And the reason is twofold. One, it felt like the right thing to do. Building community, building meditation. It's like, in general, there's a societal sense that like this should be free. But there's also a deep Buddhist tradition for thousands of years of dana, of
China.
generosity, where these teachings are passed on for free because they're priceless. And then the invitation is to contribute back, to be generous, whether with time or with money or with energy, skills. Um, so we've been trying to do that, and we found it very difficult because I think it's a really, again, it's a countercultural concept to understand. Um, I think a lot of people want to keep meditation and spirituality and things of this nature separate and away from money as a way of not corrupting it, which makes sense, right? Because money and power are often closely related, and we see countless examples of corruption emerging in these types of communities.
Mm.
Um, but the real question for me is like, if we're keeping our values and our community building and the things that we treasure and value most, our meditation practice, our spirituality, if we're keeping that separate from society, is that actually changing society? Is that actually having a bigger impact, or is that just running away? Um, and that's been a big exploration for us right now, is like, how do we even talk about money without people running away and being afraid and having all these fears and rightfully so, right? Come up. How can we talk about it, and how can we create a world where we're supporting the things that we care deeply about, um, with our money, with our time, with our energy, in a way that doesn't feel like we're losing, like from a place of lack, but from a place of abundance, and from a place of realizing really that when I give, it's not that I have less, it's that we all have more. Um, it's not easy to see.
Mm.
We've been conditioned, I think, in
Mm.
like capitalistic society to see things very, very differently. If I can only get more, then I'll be happy. If I can only get the next thing, then I'll be happy. If I can only get the next promotion, then I'll be happy. Happiness is right here. We're just doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, and then spirituality and community around that is something that's outside of that world. And how do you integrate it into that world, but keep these values
Hmm.
intact? And how
Yeah.
have you started having these conversations within the community in any way? And
Hmm.
how has it been?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've started, we put out some like feedback surveys to get like anonymous feedback. You can put your name on it or you can not, about how people feel about it. We've started to have some one-on-one conversations. And from that, we've gathered like a little bit of a landscape of like, okay, we've seen a full circle of like views on this side, views on this side, views on this side, views on this. Like, there are a lot of different views here.
Mhm.
So now we're going to introduce this concept of a round table and of like a community leadership board, where kind of like a town hall where everyone's voices can be heard. Um, and then it's not just about hearing each other's voices and sharing our voices, but it's about really trying to step into, can I really see that my view is not the only view, that my view is not the right view, that these other people who I care about, who we have shared values and shared practices, have very different views than I do. And what does that mean? And what can I learn from that? And how can we proceed together? And so with this leadership board, the idea is that we'll have a rotating board of members who are involved probably on a quarterly basis in all decision making regarding money, regarding direction, regarding big decisions that we're making, right? So that everyone kind of has this pathway to creating the community that they want to create, and so that no one feels like their voice is not heard. This is something that's really, really important to us, and it's easier said than done. You know, you say, "Hey, everyone who wants to give feedback, we're looking for feedback," and not that many people respond. But how can we really embody it and create spaces and create structures and create relationships where people know that their feedback isn't just writing on a slip, putting it in the box and never hearing about it. Like their feedback is the very foundation of the community. You know, we're creating this together. So yeah, trying to create the structures that support that vision is the next step, I think.
Yeah, so that feels like a very big step and a kind of big edge of developing new practices.
Mm,
As soon
mm,
as economic organizing, it's kind of,
yeah.
I think within Microsolid, I personally haven't really gotten to that level of organizing a community that actually
Mm,
invents its own funding and financing structure. So
mm,
I can imagine it's quite a process.
mm,
Are you drawing on kind of Microsolidarity idea box kind of with that, and in what way?
mm. Yeah, yeah. I think this is one thing that maybe is a request from the network. Anyone listening to this that has experience with this, I have 100 pages bookmarked from Microsolidarity network and all the
Yeah.
arms of it on money and power and decision making. And yeah, I think at the beginning we started with a lot of these things in place because we had maybe a more ideological perspective on shared ownership, shared decision making, shared resources. But we didn't have a big enough community or enough interest to actually make it work. So we were like building this amazing structure for a beautiful house, and no one wanted to live in it. And
Yeah.
now it's like we don't have a lot of the structure. We've abandoned a lot of the structure, and people are like wondering, like, where's like we need
There's the
this
house.
house, you know?
We're all here.
Yeah. So we're hoping to build it together, and like I think both internally with people in the community and externally from people who have done it before, who we can learn from. So please reach out, let me know what you've learned from this. I'd be hugely grateful.
Yeah, yeah. I hope you get response, because definitely plenty of people in the network who have deep experience in that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's inspiring to know that people have done it before and are doing it. That gives me a lot of faith in what we're doing.
Mm, yeah. And for someone who is at the early stages of like thinking how they can build a community around what they're doing, or
Mm,
they might have a sense like what you talked about, they are doing their cool thing, like you
mm,
did meditation that was doing wonders for you, but you felt
mm,
kind of lonely around that.
mm,
And that's a point at which people often think, or I for example do, is I'd like to build a community around that.
mm,
And that's a kind of scary moment,
mm,
and a moment, it's a kind of also a design conundrum of how to do that. So if
mm,
for people who are
mm,
at the very early stages of building community, what would you say
mm,
would
mm,
be kind of good first steps and good first considerations?
mm. I think there's two main things maybe. Um, One is like just do it, and I think just do it with the framework of I think the crew, the concept of a crew in Microsolidarity is fantastic. I think it's very well documented. I think it's relatively clear to follow. And I think there's a network of people who've done it before who can support you to do it. So I think just do it. Start a crew is like the first thing. That's how the 30-day journey started. Essentially, it was a crew before knowing the terminology, and it was awesome. And then second is like have some support or a partner, or whether it's one other friend who's also interested in this thing, or someone who might be interested in building it with you, or even just a friend to run ideas off of, and you know, share that you still haven't done it yet, and you know, you're struggling with this or that. That is huge. Community Village was a side project and an idea for like 2 years before it was anything. And what helped it go through that phase of you know, sprouting and starting to come above ground was the support of friends and the interest, the sincere interest. Oh yeah, I think this could really work. You know, when I met Nina, my partner in life and in community building, that was the step where we decided to work on a full-time together, because I shared the vision with her and she said, yes, this is exactly what I'm focused on doing, what I need, what I want, what I believe could benefit the world. So yeah, it's really hard to do alone. And even if it's just one person to check in with consistently, once a week, once a month, whatever the timeline is that you're on, talk about it, have the opportunity to express what you're thinking about. And even if it's just a listening ear, I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, great. And then for people who wonder, you know, what would community give to whatever I am doing,
Hmm.
what would you say to them? What's the kind of, what do you feel is the value that people, you've talked, you know, people, I think you've answered that plentifully, you know, people start
Hmm.
friendships around this community, becomes their,
Hmm.
yeah, place where they can really deepen into something,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
community is a massive part of what you do.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
Yet
think,
how much of it do you feel you kind of design, or how much do you feel you've just tapped into what naturally people need anyway?
hmm. Hmm. I think there's an initial spark that people are recognizing, are remembering that community is a fundamental human need. Um, so when community is offered, I think a lot of times that spark is recognized, and people are kind of drawn towards it as we're drawn towards fire as
Mm.
humans. But then the question is, what happens next? And I think that's where the structure and the individuals who decide, oh yeah, I'm gonna take care of this fire. You know, I built a fire actually at summer camp, and it was just me and one other person. And I can sometimes be nervous about my fire making skills, that they're not as good as they could be. And the person I was building it with had never built a fire before. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna teach this person to build a fire. We're gonna build a fire together. um, and I was kind of like showing him the way, but also like learning from him and his questions. He's like, oh, do you think these ones will work? Do you think those ones will work? I really had to think, you know, why would it or why wouldn't it work? You know? And I think that's what happens when we get together is we challenge each other, we support each other, we open up the opportunity for dialogue where um, you know, the sum of our involvement, um, I don't know what the saying is, the sum is greater than the part, something like that. But we become something so much bigger when we do things together. And so we can't know. I can't know what these seeds that we're planting, these structures that we're building, these signals that we're putting out there, what's going to come of them. Um, but um, I hope to continue to put them out there because it feels important to me. And if it feels important to others, I think it will pick up and it will grow. And if it doesn't, then it won't. And yeah, that's how life goes.
Beautiful. Yeah. I want to ask a little bit about like problems and things that don't work that you've
Mm,
either been able to fix or not been able to fix.
mm,
Interesting.
sure. Yeah, one thing that's been really hard, which I think the ultimate conclusion is like, if something is really hard, then it just doesn't need to happen. Like, stop trying to solve it. It's kind of how I think about it. But we tried to solve this one for a long time, and tried to really leverage microsolidarity principles, where like the 30-day journey crew is like really gelling, and they're like really getting to be friends, and they're enjoying their time together. And then the 30-day journey ends, and so Nina and I aren't going to keep putting like the facilitator host level energy into the group, but we try and give them the tools to self organize, and to continue gathering in whatever way feels good to them. We created dinner party guides on how to create a monthly dinner party and rotate hosting facilitation, how to have a meditation circle, lots of guides on how to do these things. And um, ultimately, I think there's a certain sense of momentum that once it's lost, it needs to be picked up. And if it's not picked up, and if someone doesn't have the energy and spark to be, what do they call it? Is it the caller in Microsolidarity terms? Someone who like calls a crew that we're going to do this, and kind of like
Mm,
helps like guys like, okay, this person hasn't responded. Let me check in with them. It's like simple but very maybe monotonous and administrative work sometimes of bringing groups together that um, yeah, it's hard to sustain. So yeah, trying to create that self-organizing outside of those groups is something that we haven't been able to figure out. Some groups have organized one, two, three times, but most haven't. I think when I asked Nati about this, she was like, yeah, like you created the structure, you created this container for a certain amount of time. And if it doesn't have the wish to continue to live, then it doesn't. That's okay. It doesn't
mm.
mean anything that there's a failure or something needs to be fixed. It's just, that's what it is. Um, so part of me still wants to fix it. But just because I know how good it feels to do this. I
Mm.
called a small crew in Berlin where we had dinners and um, chatted about life and got to know each other in the winter, and it was beautiful. And a lot of times I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to send the text messages. I didn't want to do the organization. I didn't want to send out another survey about dates. I didn't. It's like, that's not what I want to do. But every time I did it, I felt so happy when I did it. And every time I let myself go of feeling like I had to do it all and ask for help, um,
Mm.
people picked it up and were happy to be a part of it, happy to help. It was a beautiful little crew.
Mm. Yeah, so managing this cliff edge of something ending is
Mm,
yeah, I think Rich has been talking about this a lot, about this being a very hard problem to solve.
mm,
The experience ends, and it's difficult to manage that level of self-organization to
mm,
sustain it.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And then another one, maybe in terms of learning edges, is um, hmm, yeah, I had something, but it's not here anymore.
But you are solving it in San Francisco with the community that you have. So there is a place where you've created, right, where people, when
Mm,
they finish an experience, they can drop into this bigger pool of people that
mhm,
continue
mhm.
being part of the community. Is that right?
It is. And there's also this question of like, what, yeah, maybe this question that's alive right now is like, what more can we do to support people in their onboarding journey from experiencing community village and feeling like it's something that they connect with and that resonates with them, to finding their place in it? and to stepping into that role of like someone the other night at this book club we're doing described it as like recognizing the light within us and getting out of our own way and supporting each other to get out of each other's way to allow that light to shine, right? This community member who hosted this series of gatherings recently, before the series, he had been talking about really wanting to have people over to his house and really wanted to host things and just hadn't got the chance to do it. Whatever was blocking him, I don't know. But last night he shared, he's like that he's really sad that the experience was ending. It's such a meaningful experience to invite people in his home every week, to be a part of the community, to be able to be generous with his space and with his time, to be able to offer that. It felt amazing. And I know that's not just related to community village. That's um, that goes beyond this little community.
Mm.
And to think that at the beginning, I had some fear, thinking, "Oh, I don't want to ask him. It's putting too much on him to ask him to do this." And then it ends up being this big gift, you know. And then I look at it, oh wow, how many other things am I misperceiving in this way? Where I think it's one way, and it's actually another way, you know.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so the hard thing of not wanting to do it all and asking others turns out to be that gift that they hugely appreciate.
Hmm,
Yeah,
hmm, yeah.
yeah,
And that I hugely appreciate too. I mean, it's a cycle, you know.
yeah.
We're all connected in this way.
Yeah, and the infrastructure around that where people feel it's safe to step up. I
Mm,
think there is that layer to it
yeah.
that that is probably quite intangible to create, to describe what exactly it consists of,
Mm,
but it's there, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, I think that this part is one other thing I learned from Microsolidarity is Troika consulting groups. I love. I think they're awesome. And we did this community creators journey where we basically shared everything we've learned over hosting hundreds of gatherings, everything we've learned about creating safer spaces and facilitating from community leaders to meditation experts and then we all got together and we kind of did this brainstorm and development of okay, what gathering am I going to offer? And then we did Troika consulting groups to overcome challenges of what we're afraid of or what's keeping us from developing it further. Um,
You
and
within the community, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that was really powerful because people realized that they could help each other and that they had the answers within and the answers for each other. Um, I forget now what the question is, but
I also forgot, but what um, but yeah, it's really no, it's how we were talking about the safety of
mm,
inviting people into your own house and failing, possibly
right,
feeling too self-conscious about being the right kind of host, and how
mm,
would you overcome that in the community? And then you started
mm,
talking about troikas,
mm,
which and what effect do you think they have had on this atmosphere, on that kind of expectation setting within the community?
mm,
Like in my experience, troikas really do allow everybody to be vulnerable and kind of ask
mm,
for help, and that creates that really a sense of it. They do create a sense of safety, then that
mm,
can then be extrapolated from that group to a bigger group.
mm. Yeah, yeah, totally. That's what it was, I think. Um, and I think that's actually a big untapped potential as well that I would love to do more um, because we often offer like one-on-one support, like you can reach out anytime and we can talk through gatherings and stuff like that. But I think it's much more powerful, especially talking about like um, decreasing power imbalances and really like remembering that we all have the answers within us and that we don't need some you know, expert to go to all the time. We can support each other by creating safer spaces to share deeply and listen. But yeah, we always support people one-on-one, but it's like, how can we create the structure for people to support each other more? Um, and um, and what happens then once we start asking these questions to ourselves and to each other instead of to some, you know, person who's supposed to know all the answers. Uh, yeah, it's given me some ideas actually. And, I'm glad we talked about this.
So tell me, how did because it didn't come up earlier when we talked about how you integrated Microsolidarity into community building. So that
Mm,
feels like quite an important step, maybe. So how
mm.
uh, did you come across this format? Not in a summer gathering, it must have been somewhere else. And then how did you come to integrate it into the community?
Mm. Yeah, I came across it on the Microsolidarity network call online. Um, or maybe it was the practice program,
Mm.
one of those. Um, the practice program online was quite helpful to learn some of these common practices in Microsolidarity. And I think for me is really helpful just to have like experiential exposure to these things so that when problems arise in the community, I'm not just using the same old um,
Toolbox.
toolbox for how to solve them, but I'm actually thinking, oh, maybe I can try this other thing that seems much more useful. And so sometimes it can be scary or uncertain because, like, okay, how much explanation does it need? How much time does it need? Will people get it? But when there's the right fit for the right problem, it's like it's just perfect. And that's what I love liberating structures for, and some of these practices is like, yeah, when I saw what was happening in this community creators journey, and the first thought was like, let's do like a Q&A or like a support thing where people can ask questions to us. And then it's like, no, I don't think that's what we need. Like, let's try the microsolidarity thing and ask questions to each other. And it's like, yeah, this is what we needed.
And what kind
Um,
of questions did you bring in? So what kind of problem was it solving? What kind of
mm,
inquiry was needed at that time? Was it just more like a listening exercise of like what community needs or what
mm,
people within community need?
yeah. At that time, it was there was two parts to it. The first part was in our first round of creators journeys, people were not creating gatherings. And the whole point was like, let's create gatherings, let's learn how to create gatherings and then support each other to create them. And then people weren't creating them. So we were like, what's going wrong? Did we do something wrong? How did we mess up? Like, what's going on? And so we used Troika Consulting just for people to share with each other, why haven't you done a gathering? Well, what are your concerns about the community or the journey or the structure? What's on your mind? Um, and then once that kind of brought some great results and just allowed people to share vulnerably what was going on, we brought it in a later creator's journey as an earlier structure just to support each other in overcoming barriers to creating gatherings before we got to the point of not creating them. Like while we were still developing them, we're like, okay, let's do Troika. And then everyone created gathering. Um, Not to say it's all because of Troika, but it felt like an important part um, of the process. Another important part of the process was we instated a um, more stable volunteer leader in that group, who's like such an instrumental part of the community to um, yeah, help lead some of the organizational elements, leading by example, but also just being available and present. And if you're not seeing people in person for a certain amount of time, and then the group chat is filling up with messages, it's like, what are the odds you're going to check in? And it's like I know for me it starts to weigh on me. I don't want to look in there, it's more work. But when you have someone who's out there doing fun things, creating fun gatherings, sharing pictures, checking in with people, being a real friend, that makes a huge difference. So much gratitude and appreciation for Rich and for anyone and everyone who takes that step to say, you know, I'm going to take my place, I'm going to take my seat in this community, and I'm going to be a radical friend. Um, yeah, I hope to be that myself. I hope to try and um, spread that word.
Yeah, and in that spirit, and at the end of our chat, yeah, in terms of the community and anybody listening to this, what is it that you need, and what is it that you can offer?
Hmm. I think that I can definitely offer support and like time, and if anyone has any questions about what we're doing, if anyone wants to do a troika consulting or case clinic or something, um, if anyone is taking those first steps of like, how do I, you know, create community, and something about what I said resonated in some way, reach out, and I wanna be supportive. Um, Also, if anyone has questions about meditation, a lot of what we like to do is like share resources and help connect people to opportunities to connect with community where they are. So even if you're not in San Francisco or Berlin, yeah, if you're alone in your meditation practice and you have questions, I won't be able to answer them all necessarily, but I'll do my best to connect you if I know people or resources or centers where you can find some community. And my request, yeah, maybe I'll make two. One is on the side of like power, decision-making structures, money. If you have experience in those areas, and you have resources to share or learnings, or you'd be up for a phone call to chat, I'd be very appreciative. And we're raising money. We're a 501c3 nonprofit in the US. We're looking to, as part of our financial structure, get some grant funding from foundations and individuals who want to see meditation and community building continue to grow. So if that's you or someone you know, reach out, and yeah, let's do this together.
Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful chat. I learned a lot. It was really cool to see like an insider look of how you're building community and how you get ideas to try something new, and this kind of the basic working of this Microsolidarity principle of getting the community, people in the community, to create belonging by building it. Yeah, and the connection of meditation and community, and how that's where people find their respite for loneliness and kind of meaning. That feels like very, very important work. Yay.
Thanks, Julie.
So,
Thank you for making the time and for all the work you're doing, and I have a lot of admiration for you. And,
well, and hopefully see you at the next gathering. Thank you.